Well, I don't have much money, and I don't have much time, and I don't have many friends I could call mine. And I've been deceived, yeah, but haven't we all? I've seen the sun rise, and I've seen the sun fall. Well, I don't know why, and I don't know where, and I don't even know how, and I no longer care. But I've seen your face, and I've heard your call. Yes, I've seen the sun rise, and I've seen the sun fall. I've seen the sun hang like a flame in the sky. Yes, I've seen the sun turn, and I've seen the sun die. And I often think now, before our time is run, will there be any thoughts for what we have done? Well, I don't have much money, and I don't have much time, and I don't have many friends I could call mine. And when the night spills into the darkness of my soul, when the time comes for me to leave you, don't let me go. And you can call out my name, and you can call out my name.
Most pulpits are occupied by good men who are telling people to be good, and then they'll have a chance of heaven. But you know, the real gospel's not that. The gospel is for sinners. You don't have to be good to be saved. You do have to be saved to be good. And whosoever will may come, and all manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men. It's not who you are, it's whose you are. And you can come just as you are. He won't leave us just as we are. We don't have to worry about what God thinks of us. Only what he thinks of Christ, our substitute. When you hear the real gospel of the New Testament, the historic objective gospel that was preached by Christ and Paul, by Luther, by Wesley, then you know you have the verdict of the last judgment the moment you believe. You have everlasting life the moment you believe. You are accepted in the beloved. You're complete in him, despite stumblings, failures, 100 or more a day, not counted against us. Not one drop of the wrath of God can ever fall upon a believer.
Don't fall for the trap that people set up when they say it's not possible to keep the commandments.
He's got it.
Hey, hello, and welcome to an impromptu SDA Q&A. I'm here today with my special guest, Mitchell Strawn. How are you today, Mitchell?
Oh, I'm not that special.
Neither am I. And look, this wasn't really planned. We'd sort of talked briefly about this and pretty much locked it in this morning. Worked out a time where we could maybe chat about this topic, and we've got some people watching. Someone just said, "How are you into high ropes, Peter?" Wow. Yes, that was me. I don't know if you saw that, Mitchell. Recently did the treetops just down on the Central Coast there with my daughter Renee, and it was amazing. One of the biggest achievements I've ever done. I think accidentally, went on the advanced one, the second from top, and it was incredible. I might do a whole show on just that.
Oh, please do.
I've got lots of video and photos of me way up in the trees, crossing wires. Oh, anyway, it was a great success. Really bonded well with Renee. Now, how do we introduce today? Recently, I became aware of a letter, which we'll read out in a moment. I'll get you to read in a moment. Sent out, I think, I don't even know who it was sent out to, but it basically was stating that the Sydney Adventist Hospital car parking areas are now going to start charging for car parking on Sabbath. And I don't mind at all what decisions that the Sydney Adventist Hospital come to. In fact, I love so many of the Adventist institutions. ADRA, Sanitarium Health Food Company. I have Weet-Bix every day. My daughter goes to Avondale Primary School. I spent my life growing up in Avondale. I love Avondale University like crazy, one of my favorite places. And did I mention ADRA? I think I did. ADRA, Sanitarium, Avondale University. Both my daughters were born at the Sydney Adventist Hospital. I love it. All my life I've gone down there to cafeteria, hung out with friends, visited friends that have not been so well, said goodbye to friends down there, unfortunately, who have passed, visited them in hospital. As I said, my two daughters were born there. I love the place to bits. What we're talking about today is in many ways a kind of a theological stance, and it's a decision that I think, again, I'm making no claims here. We're talking about it so we can learn about it. I think the SPD may have been involved. I'm not 100% sure. But at some point, it's been decided that the Adventist Church that owns that soil, that land, Adventist land, that they are going to be charging car parking fees on Sabbath. And so we're going to talk about that. As I said, I'm coming from a neutral position, and it has just caused a lot of concern for some people. Some people, I wrote a couple of posts about it. I think that's how we got chatting, Mitchell. Some people are like, whatever, who cares? Some people are really upset about it. And some people are kind of two minds. Some people have said I'm bashing the church. Some people have said it's petty. I love that everyone's getting to say stuff, but pretty much anything you could say about the car parking fees being charged on Sabbath, someone has been making a comment on it. So to me, it seems like an important topic to discuss. And why are people getting upset? And, some could suggest that it's totally within their rights, their land, to do whatever they want. So, Mitchell, let's get you to read that letter. Before you do, tell everyone who you are.
So I used to train as a minister. I graduated in 2014. I did volunteer work on and off for the last little while, but I never was able to find myself in full-time ministry, and currently I serve as a teacher at one of our schools up in southeast Queensland.
Right. Nice. And we've chatted on the show before, and also you were quite a regular on Burn the Haystack.
Aye, back before they got better caliber guests.
What are you suggesting there? That I'm having to stoop to the people that they cast off?
Oh, no, not at all. They just managed to get international guests from America and everything, and they didn't need me so much anymore. And I'm happy to be a stepping stone on the way to them, reaching a wider audience and wider variety of guests.
Well, I enjoyed whenever you were on the show. You're quite the commentator. That's what I like about your contribution to podcasts and YouTube channels, etc. You're able to see what's going on and you commentate on it. And if you're a current affairs show like mine, you need to have commentators on board. So you were one of the first people I messaged, come on the program, tell us what's going on. So let's read the letter and then we're going to unpack it a little bit. It's a shorter show tonight. I've got to be gone just after 6. So we've got about 45 minutes-ish.
All right, let's not waste time.
Go for it.
So the letter reads, Dear Pastors McKibben and Pereira, Sydney Adventist Hospital has been very pleased to provide free car parking on Sabbath for well over a decade to our community, including Warringah Adventist and Fox community churches. Throughout this time, it must be noted that other services at the hospital were not provided for free. We continued to charge patients to be treated in the hospital and charged visitors for meals purchased in the Sand Cafe. We've taken a recent decision to introduce car parking fees on Sabbath as a pragmatic response to the substantial operating challenges all private hospitals across Australia are facing, challenges to which the Sand is not immune. The decision is not taken lightly. Like all private hospitals, Adventist Healthcare must improve our overall financial performance to be sustainable. As we make changes to grow revenue as well as reduce costs, we will intentionally look to maintain this hospital's safety, quality, and reputation. The Sand has been caring for our community for over 120 years, and to remain good stewards of this hospital is imperative that we make changes to the way that some things are being done. The car parking changes were the result of an extensive review of our entire on-campus parking fee structure and is the first change made to parking rates in 3 years. Parking fees were increased at less than CPI for both staff and for visitors. These changes do not diminish our intention to observe Sabbath from Sunset Friday to Sunset Saturday and to celebrate and give thanks to God for his countless blessings. Our mission of Christianity in action, caring for the body, mind and spirit of our patients, colleagues, community and ourselves, remains as strong a focus for us today as it always has. You may not be aware that all proceeds received from parking at Sydney Adventist Hospital contribute directly to the improvement of patient care, research and facilities. As part of this change, we were committed to support the estate churches by putting in place a solution to ensure we were able to provide free parking for people attending Sabbath church services. This change was implemented quickly, and we understand it was not communicated as early or extensively as has been intended. We will continue to work closely with the leaders of both churches to ensure we have a sustainable solution. I would like to thank you for your ongoing support of our hospital. Yours sincerely, Brett Goods, Chief Executive Officer.
Awesome. And we hasten to add that there's no one mentioned there that we're critical of. This is not something that we're embarking on in a sense of, putting anybody down, any institution down.
A lot of these people have been...
A lot of people are upset about, so I felt like something to start a conversation on.
Yeah, a lot of these people are, pretty surrounding of my growing up experience. Pastor McKibben was my pastor back when I was in primary school. Marcus Pereira was one of my colleagues in ministry. Brett Goods, I believe I went to school with his daughter. So all of these people, very close, no hate for any of them.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting lots of messages from people offline that watching what we're saying. So tell us, what were some of your first thoughts from a feeling level when you saw this? What did you feel?
I thought, honestly, it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. I love the Sabbath. I love being able to take a day off. One of my iron rules of the Sabbath, and I try not to have many because it's not about keeping rules, it's about keeping a relationship. But one of my few rules is that I try not to think about spending money on Sabbath, because money has always been a point of stress for me. God has always provided for me, and I'm grateful for it. But I've always lived on less than a full-time income. Money has always been tight. I like having Sabbath as a time where I don't have to worry about my expenditure.
Yeah. I even though, as you know, I've left the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I still enjoy guarding my time around that Saturday, because it's something I've culturally done and enjoyed the routine of doing. And it's a nice way to just take a bit of a respite from the world. And but yeah, I definitely don't associate any legalistic thoughts around that. And if I have to buy fuel, I'll buy fuel. And if I have lunch at the cafeteria at the Sydney Adventist Hospital, I don't even bat an eyelid. So it's slightly a different perspective now. But I'm sure there's people out there that feel that they're betrayed, maybe. Some people are just being pragmatic. And I think that the Sydney Adventist Hospital is well within their rights to go, look, we need to, we're offering a service here that is helping patients. Nurses and doctors are paid already. It's an incredible service to the community. And boy, we'd hate to see them go bust. So maybe Adventists can view it as a tithing opportunity that they just throw a little bit extra into the offering box to cover car parking.
There is a certain aspect of justice here too. We note in the letter that they have increased parking fees for the first time in 3 years and below CPI. So they've clearly decided that the cost of living pressures on their staff are severe enough to warrant taking an opportunity cost loss there. And we have to bear in mind that if you go to Isaiah 58, it says you might keep the Sabbath, but if you're not doing justice, you're not doing what God wants.
Say that again. That's interesting. And where's it from, did you say?
So Isaiah 58, I can quickly bring it up. So Isaiah 58 talks about true fasting. It's one of those verses that is, Isaiah 58:13. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and doing as you wish, as you please on the Lord's holy day, if you call my Sabbath a delight and the Lord's commands honorable, etc. It's that one that we claim about. There is a blessing in keeping the Sabbath, but we must put it within the context of doing justice, because here's what the Israelites say, and God responds with, "Why have we fasted," they say, "and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you have not noticed?" And God replies to them, "Yet on the day of your fasting you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen, only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is this what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord?" And the other alternative was you could increase prices beyond CPI, as maybe our supermarkets have done, as maybe some of our other essential service providers have done, and contribute to the cost of living pressures in a very expensive city in which to live. Or you can do what God suggests is a good idea, which is to loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, and break every yoke, to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. And I think there's a significant element of doing justice here. They've chosen to charge on the Sabbath because in doing so, they can keep prices down for their weekly employees and guests, patrons.
Yeah, well, someone did write to me and say they may be able to make about $400,000 Australian extra each year.
It's nothing in terms of hospital running expenses, believe me.
Yeah, okay. So we don't know, but you're pointing at interesting aspects there to a theological perspective. Do you think that maybe, and you can't, what is the word, conject this, can't put into this conversation what we think they might have done, but is there a possibility that they were considering also what the fallout might be by doing this? Or do you think it's mainly just been a fiscal kind of decision?
I think we should consider as well that the clientele of the Sydney Adventist Hospital is not overwhelmingly Seventh-day Adventist. So
Okay.
their clients are not going to necessarily, like we as Seventh-day Adventists, we use it if we live near enough, but the overwhelming majority of their clients, the group, like the people to whom they minister most approximately, is the local community, and they're not going to be terribly worried. Most of the Wurunga community, the North Shore community, is very much a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Church of England base. They don't really have a background in Sabbath keeping, so they might have seen free parking on Saturdays as a windfall, but they may not have understood the reason why. And it might have been an effective witnessing tool. And certainly the hospital, every sunset, they actually play a little thing on the TV saying, as we're coming into what we believe to be Sabbath hours, we invite you to rest and to relax, all of that sort of thing. But I think there isn't really much of a basis in Sabbath keeping for most of its clientele for them to care one way or the other on this.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just fielding a bunch of unexpected messages from a variety of the people involved. So I'm just really keen to ensure that we're not we're just discussing something that's obviously brought about a lot of concern to people, and I think everybody's position on this is valid, and that's what makes it quite an awkward one to talk about, because I can fully see why people who are more traditional Adventists are shocked. I can see why some people go, we're in a modern age and we're providing a wonderful service, let's add on the money. It seems like every single person involved has kind of gotten a valid point, and that's why I guess people might think, "Oh, you're treading cautiously around this topic," because I am. The actual members at the two churches on that location, I'm pretty sure that they don't have to pay parking. I'll just bring up an image that was posted on there. Let's just see if I can share the screen here. I think I can. Let's just bring this up for a moment. I think this was put up on a screen. Can you see that all right there, Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm good. I can see that. You're going to have to change it, though.
Yeah, so anyway, well, I'll just read out what it says, and then we'll talk about what you're about to say. We thank God for Sabbath. Adventist Healthcare observes Sabbath from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. While patient care needs remain a priority, Sabbath is an opportunity to worship, rejuvenate, care for family and friends, and serve others. Free parking is offered on Sabbath. And I guess they're referring to that as being at the two churches. They're saying if you come into the church, it's free parking. What were you going to add to that?
Well, unless you are a guest of the church, it might be a little bit harder to get around that loophole. But if there's anything I know about Seventh-day Adventists, we love loopholes.
Loopholes and committees.
Now, Mark Anthony said a couple of things here in the chat, and I
Yeah.
personally agree with him. I love the idea of the hospital being able to express the gift of Sabbath through even just the small things that it could provide. If it were up to me, given that I have very imperfect information, I probably would not have chosen to make that decision if I had another alternative.
Right. Well, let's bring up a couple of the comments he has made. Mark Anthony has said, but that is not a reason to charge, though. He's also added, because your clients are not SDA. You are SDA. And his final point there is that was the evangelistic opportunity. What are your thoughts on that again?
I agree broadly. If it was up to me, I probably wouldn't have charged. As I said, I don't like spending money on the Sabbath. And I understand that there's a certain level of cultural differences in say, for example, East Coast USA, they don't even wash dishes on Sabbath. In West Coast USA, they go out to restaurants on Sabbath so as to not have to work themselves. So there's a lot of different cultural expressions on how you would keep Sabbath. I personally would prefer to keep Sabbath by not spending money and by not making the people who rely on me spend money.
Yeah. What did you think when they did start? You could go to the cafeteria, and I remember going down there one day, and you had to have tokens, or there was some way around it. And then one day I went there for lunch, and you could just pay cash, credit card, whatever. Did that cause a ruckus at the time? Do you remember?
I'm not sure if I was working there at that time.
Right.
But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's probably like tokens and all of that sort of stuff that you pay before Sabbath. To me, that sounds a little bit like, temple coins, money changing. I don't think it's really necessary. If you're going to buy stuff on Sabbath, don't go through the rigmarole.
It's those loopholes again. So is it a nuanced, complicated situation? Like I can imagine that you're probably too young when it happened, but I remember it coming in, but I wasn't kind of involved with the politics of Adventist Church like I am a little bit now. But I imagine it caused a bit of a stir. And I even at the time, and I would have been considered quite a progressive liberal surfer muso dude. I'm surprised that at that time that I still felt really uncomfortable. This is a long time ago. I would have been quite young, I imagine. I can't even remember when it was, but I remember feeling uncomfortable about it, but also going, well, they are providing a service, and there's beds and doctors and nurses, and so I can understand why people feel uncomfortable with it. But the other side of me that is quite secular now also kind of balances the two, and I'm going, well, they've got to make ends meet, and it's a good opportunity for a revenue stream. I've heard that there was a time where they even paid their doctors and nurses like a 5 or 6 days of the week, but a little bit extra so it would cover the 7th. So officially it looked like you're only being paid. But I think that was a long time ago. Some people way back in the dark ages have talked about just offering their nurses not charging at all on Sabbath. A bit like ministers and missionaries, where the husband would get paid, but the wife was getting nothing, but she might also be running the school or whatever.
Oh, we love it too for the price of one deal.
So I guess we kind of are establishing that it's very nuanced and can be a complex situation. How does one approach that from an administrative kind of perspective? Imagine for a moment Mitchell is the CEO of the Sydney Adventist Hospital.
We're all in deep water.
I don't even know. Is the board all Adventists?
I don't believe so. As a matter of fact, Leon Clark, one of the old CEOs, he was Anglican. So it's not as if we've had a glass ceiling for non-SDAs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I've got no problem with that. I know with Renee up at the school here at Avondale, great school, love it, very happy. I think there's something like 75% non-Adventist kids that go to the school. Yeah, so you're suddenly made CEO and you're aware of all this, and you've got real strong push on you from people that are more secular, that work at the hospital, that are over all really keen to see it flourish, not go under. But you're also aware, because you're an Adventist CEO, that, hang on, I know this is going to upset a lot of people. You got your own personal feelings coming in. How does one step out of the kind of all those complex kind of concepts and make decisions that are the right ones for the whole institution, church, property, churches, hospital? Be a hard one.
Again, yeah, I have imperfect information on this one, and I guess if I had perfect information, I'd probably be in a position like CEO. So I couldn't say what they need, what they should have done, because I just don't have access to the data that inform their decision making. One thing I am aware of is that public hospitals were not invested in for the longest time. Concord Hospital used to be the paint peeling off the walls, no renovations in 50 years, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Used to have all of that sort of stuff going on. And then the state governments have been pouring money into our public hospitals, and patient care at public hospitals is now on par, if not better, than private hospitals. And that is the new reality in which the Sydney Adventist Hospital has to function. It's also worth noting as well that the Sydney Adventist Hospital does a lot more elective surgery than it does medically necessary stuff. Well, I mean, medically necessary in the sense that orthopedic stuff is medically necessary for quality of life, but like, we're not doing. They don't have a trauma ward at the in ED. It is not a hospital of first point of call, if that makes sense.
Right.
So when it comes to the niche that the Sydney Adventist Hospital occupies, it's in a weird place where it does surgeries, it does not really frontline sort of stuff. And it's now having to compete against a public health system that has been reinvigorated. I cannot speak to nurse remuneration. But no doubt there's a lot of pull to try and get nurses back into public hospitals, and the hospital now has to find some way of negotiating that as well, especially after COVID, when so many nurses burned out because of what was required of them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing there. Boy, I don't see. Well, I guess they allowed people to pay cash in the cafeteria many years ago, so no one's talking about that or worried about that now. So I guess this could just slowly kind of percolate in the background and disappear. Or do you think it's a little bit more? It's a little different this time, a little bit more serious. What do you think?
I think it's one of those issues that will probably not affect most people.
Right.
The churches still get free parking, and they can afford to do that because normally they would use a lot of the parking for the specialists that come in to work business hours. Since Sabbath isn't business hours, they've got a whole lot of extra parking spaces. If it ever did become a problem, there's no reason why people couldn't decide to carpool, for example. That would be a great element of creation care too. But I think we're getting a little bit off topic with that.
Well, I think it's not off topic. You're thinking of ideas to ensure that it settles without too much disruption in many ways. Yeah, it's I didn't expect to be. I'm not so distracted that I'm not listening, but I'm normally I get a lot of people comment in the comments that you can see on the side there. But there's a lot of people writing to me in the private messages who want to say stuff and ask stuff but can't come on, and I'm having to jump between a few little platforms to be able to read messages, and they're coming so fast. So it's obviously a unique conversation. I've done like 200, 300 interviews, and often comments based. I've never had this much coming to me behind the scenes before. So those that are writing to me behind the scenes, I can't totally keep up with it and be able to concentrate on this as well. But which makes it, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? I wasn't expecting that. It shows that people feel that they can't talk about it. What do you think they might be fearing?
I have no idea. I mean, I guess it depends on the sort of people who are messaging you. There might be people who owe their livelihoods to the church and they don't feel that speaking up would put them in a good place. There might be people who have significant social ties to church leadership and they don't want to be seen as throwing their friends under the bus. So I have always had a habit, I guess, of talking first and asking questions later.
We share that. Well, look, I'll bring up something from Hal Southwell. Let's just let those that are comfortable writing to us, please do in the comments. So far, this is only the second one. I think they are going fast. And then I'll ask some people that are writing to me, I'll ask them if they can phrase some questions that I can just put to you. Almost everything Adventists choose to do or not do around Sabbath keeping is challenging when compared to the fourth commandment as written by the finger of God. There will always be endless debate. Yeah, if this was a different time, there would be no question. They are breaking the Sabbath, stone them. So obviously, when one wants to keep the commandments, you've got to look at what the punishments were for disobeying those commandments, and they've kind of been watered down a little bit.
I mean, we have good precedent for watering them down. Jesus himself said that his disciples could glean grain on the Sabbath, rub it in their hands, and eat it.
Yes,
I think it's also worth keeping in mind as well that we should look at the way that Jewish people keep the Sabbath versus the way that Adventists keep the Sabbath, because it's a very different sort of thing. Are you right if I go into a little bit more detail on that?
Yes, sure.
So when I was growing up, I have a good friend who is like one of my three best friends who is Jewish. And I was very much privileged to go to his place and witness opening Sabbath, how they do it. There's so much ritual, there's so much culture. It's so rich. It's pregnant with meaning. It's beautiful. The little oral traditions that have sprung up around it, the thing how they have the challah and the cup of wine, and they cover the breads because, according to tradition, the bread gets jealous that the wine is blessed first. All of that sort of thing. And it's worth noting that there is, I guess, a lot of loopholes in Judaism. There is an invisible wire that spreads a whole way around New York City in a Jewish community in order to circumvent the Sabbath day's journey requirement, all of that sort of stuff. Some Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox communities have the Shabbos Goy, who comes in and flicks on all the light switches for them because electricity deriving from fossil fuels obviously is lighting a fire on the Sabbath, which they don't feel comfortable with. Says, if we like to consider ourselves Christian Jews, we certainly get our love for loopholes from a very honest place. But Eddie Hippolyte once shared something very interesting when he was talking to a Jewish rabbi. He mentioned he was Seventh-day Adventist, and the Jewish rabbi said something very telling. He said, "Oh, you Seventh-day Adventists, I know you. The difference is you keep the Sabbath. We celebrate it."
Oh, interesting.
And one of my good friends who I went through college with, Marty Thompson, related a story once about how Jewish people almost mourn the end of Sabbath. Whereas we as Adventists can't wait to see it go, more often than not.
Wow, that is fascinating.
So we need to ask ourselves, what exactly does Sabbath mean to us? Do we want to go in on the legalism and the loopholes like the Jewish people did? And there is some beauty to the way that they do things, but there is also some things which we wouldn't really consider in the character of God.
No.
Or do we want to ask, what does doing justice on the Sabbath represent?
I find the topic of keeping the Sabbath one of the most fascinating, but ultimately one that you can never land on a satisfactory answer.
So, yes, in response.
I look at the international dateline and I go, yep, well, if you really want to go on what the Lord said, the sun, follow the sun, it's an arc of shadow that's coming, or light's coming, the shadows dispelling. I can't remember which way around it goes. You immediately put the international dogleg around it. You're causing a lot of confusion there. But to me, you go, well, if you wanted to keep it on the sphere and the sun, well, you ignore the international dateline. But people have big debates. Do we ignore the international dateline, or do we follow the law, what the laws of the day say? And then you go, well, where do you say that the starting point is? Shouldn't it be maybe over Jerusalem instead of Greenwich? Why do we choose that time frame? And then what happens when you go further north? And I think Ellen White advised people to leave the Nordic realms and live closer to the equator to avoid that problem. And so I just think there's a part of me that goes, this is taken so seriously, but it's impossible. It's like a Rubik's Cube that someone's changed the colors on, and you're just never going to finish it. You can never satisfactorily. You can nod to going, I want to celebrate and enjoy it, but then how far does that go? You can nod to going, I want to keep it and kind of not spend money, but how far does that go? It's an endless point of confusion.
And I think it'd be well for us to keep in mind Galatians 5 and what it says about law keeping and seeing law keeping as a path to salvation. Because Galatians 5, Paul writes, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Mark my words, I, Paul, tell you that if you let yourselves be, in the case he was writing about, circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. Again, I declare to every man that lets himself be circumcised, or bound by stringent Sabbath-keeping regulations in order to keep God happy, that he is obligated to obey the whole law. Like, if you go and put all these laws around it, you start getting to the point where the Galatians were. You started defining yourself by your adherence to the law rather than by your adherence to the one who put in place the law, and by grace and by his faithfulness to us changes our hearts to love his character as expressed in the law.
It's all about understanding when law takes over celebration, and celebration loses track of boundaries. And I think Adventists, rightly or wrongly, and I did get a bit of hot water for this week, where I'm suggesting that Adventists kind of officially teach the Sabbath, originally at least, was a salvific kind of issue, a requirement to get into heaven. And people said, no, that's never been an official teaching. And so then you say, well, it's a central theme maybe. But in my interview I did yesterday with a panel on this topic, Simon Houston mentioned that it's, for him, he can only speak of what his impression was growing up as an Adventist. And he distinctly came away with the impression that keeping the Sabbath is connected to your salvation. So I wonder, that then adds another element of nuance to this situation, because not only is it about keeping the Sabbath or correctly or enjoying the Sabbath, it's this flagship church of ours, are they abandoning this very important doctrine, a pillar of the churches? It's in our name. If they abandon that, is that going to be affecting people's salvation?
Is your personal salvation affected by the actions of the institution?
Yes. Well, obviously, you'd say probably no, but you've got to say the vessel on which you've decided to take this cruise of life on. If it's saying you're not allowed to play badminton on Sabbath, but they are providing badminton coaches that you have to pay, and there's nothing else to do, like by giving people the opportunity to break the Sabbath, are they in some way culpable of that theologically?
And whose responsibility is that? Is that your responsibility, or is it theirs? Do they have to answer for it?
Well, ultimately, it's, I think, your own responsibility. But if God tells someone like Ellen White, whispers in her ear that this is pretty important, Ellen, I want you to tell everybody that if you're going to be an Adventist, this is how you get into heaven. It suddenly does become the responsibility of the institution that has taken on that mantle, theologically speaking. Wouldn't you say?
Look, I'm lucky, and perhaps I shouldn't admit to this as someone who at some point wishes to work for the church, but I haven't read an Ellen White book in years. And I don't think that Ellen White is necessary for I don't think that anything she says is necessary for my salvation or for my biblical edification. And I take seriously her words when she says, go to the Bible instead, and if you went to the Bible, you wouldn't need me. So that's where I'm at with all of that. The other thing I think it's important to keep in mind is that we as Adventists give a lot of lip service to progressive truth. And implicit in the idea of progressive truth is the understanding that at some point we have to be wrong.
Yeah, true. I agree.
There is something that we don't quite understand yet that we are wrong about.
Yeah.
And God will bring us to that understanding in his time when he knows we are ready. As a matter of fact, as a side note, I think that God has already brought us to understandings of things that we have been wrong about, we are institutionally wrong about, and yet as an institution we refuse to follow the clear teaching on the Bible.
What you'll find, though, is I would suggest
women's ordination.
What you will find, you definitely don't want a job, do you?
Oh gosh. I've gone, okay, I'm going to have to wait another 10 years.
And I think what you'll find, no matter what someone says, that, well, for me personally, I haven't read Ellen White, or I don't use her to get to the Bible. You can look at the Adventist Church as an institution which influences its members, which cradles them in their safe arms, which guides them through the difficult waters, which tells them all about what the time of trouble is going to be like. As a member, you generally take on these boards, on these ideas, because you've had the impression that the church overall is right, and you've harnessed your carriage to it. And then if you note the church at every single point when they've had this chance to be honest, 1888, 1919, 1957, Questions on Doctrine, 1980, Glacier View, the compliance document of 2019, at every point, in my humble opinion, Ellen White is the authority you do not want to question. So you might individually say, hey, I've come to the decision to love the Sabbath because of the Sabbath. But whispering somewhere in the back of the reason that you're doing that is Ellen White. Ellen White permeates every single Adventist doctrine. God whispered in her ear and said, this is the truth. I tell you to pass this on to these people that are the followers of this movement.
All of that being said, Darren Pratt actually raised an interesting point in a previous comment thread. He said that in college he was forbidden to use Ellen White as a theological source. And if you could not prove doctrines from the Bible, then you had no business holding them. And we were told the exact same thing when I trained at college. If you have to use Ellen White, then clearly you don't have as good a grounding as in the Bible as you should. And
but don't you see the irony that you're told to do that and you go, awesome, we're doing that. But when it comes to the crunch, at every single point in the whole of Adventist church history, they have never been truthful about agreeing, oh, yeah, this has changed. There's been progressive information here because of Ellen White. So
I would actually suggest that
Ellen, go just the Bible alone, everybody, and she's just a messenger.
Let's consider in 1888 and the years after that, she was as much a victim of this as everybody else. She's always been in competition with her own mystique.
She got shipped down here.
Exactly, because she told them, like she told the General Conference leadership, what you're doing is wrong. The General Conference leadership split up Loughborough Wagner and Jones and Ellen White because the three of them together were causing problems and that were making them feel uneasy about the whole, but you've got to keep the law. You've got to keep the law. It's important. And they were all saying, because the 1888 message was Christ is our righteousness. And they split them up so they could break up that message. And you know what happened to Wagner and Jones? They both ended up getting off on the wrong track and leaving the church.
Well, it's interesting that whenever Ellen White has kind of flip-flopped on these different things, or progressed, or whatever way you want to look at it, or regressed and then progressed. Ellen White, like if you look at Butler, you just mentioned him. And by the way, Dr. Denis Fortin, go and buy his book on Butler, everyone. It is an incredible read. Also, go and buy Gil Valentine's book. I think it's the Canaries and Ostriches book. If you want to understand the church politics at play with Ellen White and the politics and this exact kind of topic, you will love both of those books. Go and buy them. I just wanted to add to that even Butler was confused. He's like, I'm just defending what you told me, So I kind of don't really care if Ellen White has, let's prove the Bible without her. Let's not have her come up in this conversation. She changed herself as well as that. To me, that's just all froth and bubble, and it's a diversionary tactic. The bottom line is the Adventist church would not exist if it wasn't for Ellen White, and her perfume just permeates every single doctrine. And at every point when Adventists could become open, progress, a bit more truthful, the administration clamps down, and Ellen White is the reason. She's the line in the sand.
And it's something that frustrates me greatly, because what this has gone and done, so we understand that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Yes. We're not saying that a person is the spirit of prophecy. We're saying that the testimony of Jesus, the gospel.
Adventists don't say that.
Any Adventist
the thrust of the Adventist message, the thing that permeates and the impression that most people walk away with from connecting with Adventism is that Ellen White is the spirit of prophecy.
Yeah, and I hate that because
this is where the conversation will always go. You'll hate it, but there's nothing you can do about it because the machine doesn't agree with you. The machine wants Ellen White to assist. And so what then happens is people like yourself, and this is not putting you down, but people that are progressive Adventists want to see gospel Adventism come to the fore, which I rally for as well, end up going, hey, well, let's just focus on Jesus. And my local church is really good. And I'm like, oh, okay, end of conversation.
Well, I mean, we had to be fair, we have had some good leaders in the past. I really liked Jan Paulsen's approach to things. I think Jan was a statesman in a way that I don't like. We may not see another statesman like him in the church for quite some time. He was able to balance all of those conflicting ideologies and perspectives in a way that united the church. And
people like him are squashed all the time. You go, him, Figure was Figure one of the ones around before Pearson, around the questions on doctrine time. The president at the time was very open to this kind of progressive sort of stuff that we're talking about. So we've got Jan Paulsen. How many years earlier? 70 years earlier, Figure. How many years earlier, Daniels and Prescott? Prior to that, can't think of any. But at any point when those leaders did go to, hey, let's make some changes. Let's be more gospel oriented. Let's do what Ellen White said. Let's test everything to the Bible. What are they squashed with? Ellen White herself.
1919 and its consequences were a disaster for the Adventist church.
Exactly. Massive disaster.
And if I may go on a bit of a tangent.
Yes. I've got a great comment to bring on that brings us back into this conversation.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go to 1 Corinthians 14. And I think there's something that we all need to be incredibly aware of. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 1 says, follow the way of love and eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit, especially prophecy. And as soon as you start saying that, people start getting scared in the Adventist church for two reasons. Number one, prophecy can't be controlled unless the prophet is dead, and you can make a writing say whatever you want. And number two, As soon as you start having prophecy, you now have the responsibility to test the prophets, as in 1 John 4. Test the spirits to see if they come from God. People feel uncomfortable with the idea of prophecy, and it's a lot easier for us to accept, oh, we had one, yes, we don't need another prophet. This is enough for us. But a living, spirit-filled movement needs to be operating in all of the gifts of the Spirit. 1 Corinthians 12, it says, the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, or whatever body parts they are, can't say to the other body parts, I don't need you. We can't just say, we've got one eye, we don't need another one. We've got one ear, we don't need another one. It's ridiculous. And this whole deification or hagiography of Ellen White has led to a pronounced dearth of the ministry and the movement of the Holy Spirit in our assembly. Because we've decided that one is enough. We can treat them on a level of verbal inspiration, which is something that neither she nor we hold the Bible to. Sorry, I'm getting off topic.
No, I like it. That's what these conversations are all about. We're having a conversation. Sometimes I forget there's people watching, and that's why I talk too much sometimes, because it's a conversation. No, I love what you said there, and it does tie into this. It's not totally off topic at all. I'm just going to read in. Makes me think I want to have you on the show more often, Mitchell.
Well, you need to pick a time that's not in school term.
I know. Leave your job. Okay, I'm just going to bring.
Maybe I'll just write a couple books. Maybe I can live off the royalties or something. You can have me on as often as you like.
Oh, well, yeah. Become a musician. Now, I'm just bringing up what Hal Southwell has added. I think I haven't read this, did I?
Yeah, we did.
Oh,
that one,
I read the next one. I think, did I as well? Oh, yeah. He's added, yes, Peter, you cannot find a definitive answer to Sabbath keeping due to a poor understanding of God's law, so the debates will never end. And I wanted to bring up this one here. Thank you, Patrick. He's watching around Canberra way somewhere. This is a good point. Sabbath keeping defined by SDAs is not defined clearly, hence all the problems it creates. Undefined clarity equals defined problems. I would only add to that is that it's impossible to define, because by defining you start saying, so what should you do and what shouldn't you do?
Or how about we stop going off human-involved rules, like you can't go up to your knees on the Sabbath, and start seeking a daily relationship with God and let him lead you into an understanding of what is and isn't appropriate for you to do on Sabbath. Why don't you be led by the Spirit? How hard is it? It's literally available for you to ask. It's literally the thing that God is most willing to do, is to give us the Spirit. How about we ask him?
And I always come back to my love of playing the guitar. Like I would never sit with. I think I've said this a million times before, but when I started teaching guitar in the late 70s, when I was in high school, and I noticed that I had this big turnover of students. And after about a year, I thought, what am I doing? And I just had this epiphany. They need to love the guitar. They need to love it. And then they'll put time in it because they love it. I've been saying you must practice half an hour every day. What did you do then? Your finger was in the wrong place. Put it here. I said it nicer than that, but it was all about how to do it better by doing this. And when I said to them one simple thing, I only want you to practice 5 minutes a day, 4 times a week, everything changed. I never lost a pupil ever again unless they moved town. And I built up a really amazing. I had 70 pupils. Come the mid 80s, I was making more than the average person and only working 35 hours a week. So it works. When you teach people to love something, they fall in love with it, and all of a sudden, all that other stuff falls away. But I don't think you can have a conversation like Patrick suggested, that they need to define it better, because you cannot define how you approach loving something.
Antoine de Saint-Exupéry says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea.
See, you've said it. Brilliant.
And I will apologise to Mark Anthony for getting too worked up too. I see you.
Did he say something?
Oh, he said I've got an engaging way of conversing when I'm not worked up. I'll take that as a very left-handed
compliment. I disagree, Mark. I think it's good to be passionate. I'm waving my arms as well. Are the things that have been coming through there that we need to read? I'll bring up because we are going to have to wrap up soon, but I'll bring up a couple of things that I think people are messaging me like crazy behind the scenes. Amazing. Let's just see. This is Darren Pratt is watching, and he's just written on the Facebook group, many middle-aged men now play the guitar well in our churches because of the influence of Peter Dixon. Okay, a gift that keeps on giving. Oh dear, thank you.
We stand on the shoulders of giants.
And okay, so let's I'm just going through the tens of messages PM'd to me here. I think one of them is even someone that actually works for the SPD, but I don't want to say anything in case they're just writing to me and don't want it to be public, so that's okay.
Could you de-identify it? Drop the name?
No, because all they've said is who they are and their job. Yeah, they haven't made a comment yet. Let me go to another one. How about here's one here. Business versus a religious institution. At what point do we trust God or take up an offering of members to cover the shortfall? This is an SDA flagship, not just a business. It is held in trust on behalf of all members.
I think there is a certain element to that, to which I think that is very true. I've heard stories of, so one of my friends from college who is now serving as a minister in the North New South Wales Conference, quite close to you actually, his mother, when she was leading Pathfinders, noticed that the tank was coming empty and she would have to buy fuel on Sabbath. You know what she decided to do? She decided not to do that and instead to drive back. She drove further than she had any right to on that tank of fuel.
Yeah, so I don't know about that, because now we're getting into Ted Wilson with his recent PNG outreach, and a white bird happens to fly in over it, and he doesn't claim anything there, but people were cheering, and it's now open to being maybe that was the Holy Spirit descending on the people. I think that just adds another confusing element, because other people go, well, I saw in vision that the Lord said we needed to be doing this to, like how do you refute or agree with anyone's kind of supernatural claim? It just potentially muddies the water.
Is it our job to do that? I mean, yes, it is our job to do that. It's our job to test the spirits, but to a certain extent, I've also found that God will lead, like there will be obvious deception to those who understand the gospel. And in those cases, you can safely dismiss things. Where things are a little bit iffy, you might suggest, we'll give this some time and see how it works.
What you said there is iffy to me. So one man's iffy is another man's solid confirmation that the Lord was leading.
And
I see a white dove descending over people as Ted Wilson's about to come on, and he's not making this claim, but others were making the claim that this is a sign from God. And I would say that's iffy. A lot of people might say, no, it's not. Who decides what's iffy and what's not iffy? That's all I'm saying. And particularly if you're going to talk about car parking and the Sabbath and how to keep the Sabbath and is it breaking it or not, if we add the supernatural component to it, it's going to make it, Mitchell, you will be here for days.
And maybe that's a good thing. I think we want nice, easy answers. And in the spiritual world, there are not nice, easy answers. Daniel was praying for 3 weeks in Daniel 10 before Gabriel was able to make it to him. Sometimes these things just take time. And we need to be okay with that. We need to work on God's time frame, not on ours.
And that's why I'm glad we're having the conversation, because we're saying, hey, let's let's talk about this. And
And,
isn't it funny though that I'm feeling, and people that are writing to me, we're all feeling like, are we allowed to talk about it?
Honestly, here's what I would suggest every single person watching this. If you have a problem with what the church is doing, then I counsel you to pray about it, because we have given the hospital to God. It exists for his glory, to advance his ministry of healing. The hospital is God's. If we have a problem with what is happening at the hospital, let's give it to God, and God will make a way so that they no longer have to charge. They can reverse this decision. It's not a difficult decision to reverse. So let's all be praying about it. The more of us that pray, the more permission we give God through free will to work in our lives and in the life of our institutions. And God willing, we might be able to not charge for parking on the Sabbath anymore. Wouldn't that be grand?
Yes.
But we try to answer these things in our own strength and in our own wisdom. So often we forget that we have a ready source of power available to us. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. I hadn't even thought to pray about the thing until I mentioned it here. So I'm guilty.
So it wasn't your first go-to thought?
No, and that's the problem.
Talk about something while I just keep trying to work through some of these messages, and then we'll say farewell in a minute. Is there anything else you wanted to raise on this, on comments you can see in the post? Because I'm just trying to sort through if there's some other interesting things in the milieu of behind-the-scenes messages I'm getting.
Oh, Barry Ford's mentioned something here, but I just don't have the information to comment on it without possibly getting things wrong. So I'm not gonna speak without knowledge.
Okay.
But yeah, when it comes to I think this is the problem. Like we as Adventists, we tend to intellectualize things so much. We want to be right. I was speaking to a conference president not so long ago, and I asked him, each church tends to have a personality. We tend to attract a certain kind of people. Anglicans tend to attract more mellow, understanding people because they're a broad church and they have to be okay with disagreement. Pentecostals tend to attract extroverted type A sort of individuals because it's a very energetic denomination. And I asked our nameless conference president, what kind of people do you think Seventh-day Adventism attracts? And he said, after some thought, those who want to be right. And I think that's our problem. We do want to be right about everything. We need to have the correct biblical doctrines. We need to be acting the correct way. But that's in our own wisdom, where we can't be perfect. That's the whole point of why Jesus came down. And I think if we were to rely on God to help us out, we were to look at the example of the early church and realize they got things wrong too. Maybe we'd be a little bit more okay with getting things wrong, seeking God and learning from our mistakes.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of messages here that have come through via the old kind of Facebook thing. So I can only see Facebook user. Someone has written, but aren't we all here for the supernatural, in reference to what I was saying before? I'm not speaking against that at all. I'm just saying that if you're going to discern between, obviously some people do make up stuff and some people are the real deal, how do we decide? What was the word I used before that you used?
Test the spirits?
No, when we decide if what's right for you might not be right for me.
Oh, iffy sort of stuff.
Yeah. If something's iffy for you but not for me, how do we kind of form consensus on that? That's what I was saying there. And that someone else has put, perhaps the sand and admins forgot about that ready source of power. Someone else has written, I do think there is truth in having faith and belief that God will carry us through. Petrol covering, paying tithes, offerings before groceries, having sufficient through the Sabbath, etc. And I agree that that's a possibility as well. I'm not saying it's not. And I think that's then what makes it a personal thing. It's when people say it to other people as a way of, hey, you should do that too. I did it, you should do it. That's when, to me, it becomes iffy. So the last person that's just writing that, I think for your personal thing, if you're driving somewhere and you pray and you find that you go 500 kilometers longer, but then you've got people like Roger Morneau. I interviewed his son the other day, and he was an ex-Satanist, and he said that he kept his printer going for a couple of years on one cartridge because he prayed about it. And his son's kind of saying, well, he was stretching it a bit there. I'm not sure if it was that exact topic, but so thousands of people have been influenced by Roger Morneau saying, look, I spoke to or someone told me they'd spoken to a demon, and the demon said, look, the Adventists are the real church. Well, heaps of people came into the church because of that. To me, that's very iffy. But if you're
I don't like listening to demons.
No.
The demons also say that they're scared of the Virgin Mary.
But if you're personally finding comfort in going, you know what, my printer, I prayed about it and it went for 2 years without me having to buy a new cartridge, great. It's only when people use it as a tool of manipulation that I start going, well, hang on a second. I hope that explains a little bit of what I'm saying to those that are watching.
There's a distinction between testimony and tyranny.
Yes, that's a very good line. Yeah. Oh, Mark Anthony's just said, very insightful, Mitchell. So there we go.
Praise God for that.
He's taken away the backhander. Okay, well, look, we're going to wrap it up. I just quickly, though, look, are there people watching? We could have 10 minutes that would like to literally come on the program now with Mitchell and have some thoughts and publicly share your thoughts. We've had behind the scenes people writing to me. We've had Facebook users that I can't tell who it is. And we've got some good comments going on the side here as well. But if someone would like to, just let me know and I'll put the link. I can send you the link. So let's give us some closing thoughts, but we'll give people 2 minutes to look. We've started a conversation. I think that's good. I really appreciate you coming on the show last minute. But let's let you have some closing thoughts. And while you're doing that, those watching, just message in the comments or behind the scenes, and I will send you a link. Come on for a couple of minutes and just quickly share your thoughts. I'd love that.
So my closing thoughts, if I were to sum up everything that I've said, I'd say I personally still choose to keep Sabbath because it is a gift to me. It is a relief to me. So I don't have to mark on the Sabbath. Ew. As well, like if I needed to go to the sand on Sabbath, I would park on the street as I always used to do. I personally choose to keep Sabbath in a way that is consistent with my conscience. And I would encourage us that if we have a problem with the way that our institutions are being run, that we do a whole lot of praying about it. I personally believe in the power of prayer. I've seen it happen in my life. You don't have to take my word for it. Test it out for yourself. Taste and see that the Lord is good. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not your mother. But that's my experience, and I hope that all of us can see God at work to show that he has good plans for us, that he loves us, that he intends good things for us.
They could send emails too if people have got concerns. And I think at the end of the day, if you've just said something I hadn't thought about there. At the end of the day, if the church, if the Sydney Adventist Hospital or the church or whoever's responsible for that Adventist soil there and implementing the parking fees, if they decide that they'll do it, it sounds like you'll go, okay, well, you're trusting the leadership to a degree. You're not going to suddenly spit the dummy and leave the church, but you can have choices. You can go, you know what, I'm going to just park on the street. It's a personal thing, isn't it? You can just do your personal thing. You don't want to break the Sabbath.
My dad always said, because he was a finance man for the church for some years, he's seen plenty of occasions where church money has been wasted. But he never failed to give his tithe because he said they are the ones who are like, you're not going to be punished for giving your tithe in good conscience, even if people waste it. You're not an accessory to crime. You're not abetting them. They're the ones who hold the responsibility, and they're the ones who will answer for it.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility to worry about what people way above my pay grade are up to. They answer to God about that, and I trust that they made their peace with God in this decision.
And maybe they've made the right decision.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an act of justice not to increase prices above CPI.
Yeah. Well, I encourage everyone watching, dig deep, make a donation to Sydney Adventist Hospital, make a donation to ADRA, make a donation to... Can you make donations to Avondale University?
Yes, you can, and if you're a progressive, you should.
Yes, do that. And the Adventist schools, make some donations.
Yes, increase my pay, please.
And that reminds me, if you're enjoying the content that I'm bringing to you, you can also make a donation to me so I can keep bringing this content into your car, lounge room, bedroom, wherever you're choosing to listen. Just QR code there, and that keeps me being able to provide this kind of material each week, 2 times a week, sometimes 3. And I've been talking. Did you officially finish your theology degree, or did you say you just started it?
Oh yeah, I graduated 2014.
Right. Congratulations.
So,
and no one's accepted our little invite to come on the program, but that's all right.
they're all wiser than me.
But even like we said earlier, the fact that people feel they cannot talk about it is another whole conversation. Kelly Byrne has said, "Where do you work, Mitchell?"
I work at one of our Adventist schools in South Queensland.
Yes, good. And I forgot to mention Sanitarium. You don't need to make a donation to them. I have Weet-Bix every day, and this is not a paid ad. I love Weet-Bix.
I can second. I also had Weet-Bix this morning.
I'm feeling like Weet-Bix right now. Mitchell, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. We will get you back sooner than later.
God willing.
We've just got Chris Lucas, the Protestant, has just joined us. It is a very random time. We normally, all our American friends are sound asleep. So, anyway, we've got some UK people watching. Anyway, we are going to wrap it up there. I'm going to go and have a lovely dinner with my gorgeous girls, and we'll bid thee farewell, Mitchell. Thank you again. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you've taken this in the spirit it's intended, to have discussion. We love all the players, and certainly those that are, thinking that we might have been criticizing even the supernatural stuff. None of that. We all get to make our own choices and, be discerning. But yeah, send emails. And what was your suggestion, Mitchell?
Pray about it. It's trite, but it's the most important thing you can do.
Now, next week, just a quick plug. I like to put little plugs in when I can. I think it is Monday night, Pacific time, 7:30. Tuesday, 11:30 or 12:30, I'm interviewing Alison Johnson. Now, she's a cousin of Terry Johnson, the union president here, and she's going to share a little bit about her walk within the Adventist Church. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. Wednesday and Thursday, my time. Tuesday, Wednesday, US time, I'll be away, but we'll be back the following week. So that's been good that we've had this extra interview today, one on Tuesday, Monday night, USA. And I'm loving it. And we'll see you again soon. See you, Mitchell.